What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 7 of my poker vlog. That's my wife banging stuff around in the background, so I'm gonna do that again. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 7 of my poker vlog. Today we're going to review some hands that we had at Prime Social Club last night, and we're going to take the family to a pretty fun little place called 7 Acres Farm in Conroe, Texas. I'm a simple man, don't wanna complicate ya. Shoot a little hoops. I'm a simple man, don't wanna complicate ya. What'd you guys think of those sick moves? Still got it. Never really had it. Maybe I had it this much. Alright. So, last night we went and played poker at Prime Social Club again. You can see the families back there somewhere playing in a little boat that they have on the lot here. So, first hand to discuss, we're in the small blind with Ace-10 offsuit. There are 5 limpers ahead of us. Now, this is definitely a hand that we could and probably should raise. This is probably the second hand of the session, maybe third or fourth, and I kind of just want to limp in here because a lot of times in these spots what'll happen is you'll raise, you'll get a caller somewhere along the way, and then other people will sort of cascade and you're going to end up seeing a flop with 4 or 5 people. Ace-10 offsuit doesn't really play that well. So if we are going to put in a raise here, we want to make it big enough to where we price out almost everyone. But I elected to just call here, and the big blind checks. So we have 7 people to the flop, and the flop is 10, 7, 4 hearts. We got top pair, top kicker, but no heart. So in spots like these, I like to lead out an early position on limped multi-way pots. If we check, a lot of times this is going to get checked through, and if another heart comes, we're almost certainly dead, and it's pretty hard to make a flush, and we're pretty much beating everything else at this point. So I think it's a good time to go ahead and put in a bet. So I put in a $15 bet, and we get 1 caller. The button calls. The turn is an 8 of clubs. Not the greatest card. I'm happy not to see a heart, but this does complete a lot of straight draws. We lead out for 25, and then the button re-raises. He does a min raise. He clicks it back for 50 total. I don't think I've played with this guy before, but he is an older gentleman, and generally we like to give players like this credit when they make raises on turns and rivers. Flop raises are often people fishing or, you know, was trying out a bluff and seeing if your hand can stand a raise. But generally when people raise you on the turn in the river, and specifically sort of tighter, more passive players who don't really mix it up too much, then this is a really bad sign for our hand. I'm pretty much feeling like the majority of the time he has a flush or a straight or two pair at the least. So we're not looking too good against any of those hands. We don't have a redraw. If we had the ace of hearts in our hand, then we surely would call. But without a heart in our hand, and really just praying that he's getting completely out of line, which we're not expecting, we go ahead and fold. I don't generally like to fold to a min raise, but I think this is sort of the perfect storm, and a fold is something that we can find here. He did show us his hand. He had 5-6 offsuit with one heart. So he did indeed make the straight on the turn, and he had a draw to the heart flush. A pretty bad heart flush, but a heart flush nonetheless. So the next hand, there's a straddle to $6. Middle position bets 31, and we call from cutoff with 8-9 of hearts. The flop is 2-9 king rainbow, so we have a middle pair here, as well as a redraw to the flush. He checks and we check back. We want to protect our equity here. We've got a hand with some showdown value. I don't think that a value bet will really be good here because there's really no hands that he can have that he'll call with. He maybe could call with a hand like pocket 8s or pocket 7s or maybe even pocket 6s, but I would rather just check back here, protect our equity, and if we pick up a heart on the turn, we are definitely going to barrel at this one. The turn is an ace of diamonds and middle position checks. I feel like a lot of times he's going to lead out with an ace here since he checked the flop, because at some point you got to start building a pot, and really this would be the time to do it if he has an ace. So we put in about a half-size pot bet of 35 and he calls. The river is a 2 of diamonds and he checks again. He's now checked on 3 streets. So to me, that's telling me that he is not too crazy about his hand. I think if he had a king, he bets the flop. I think if he has an ace, he bets the turn. And I think that if he had an ace, for sure he would bet this river. He checks to us again, and this time we fire a bet of 85. It's about a 2/3 pot size bet. I'm trying to make it look like I'm going for value here, and not, I don't want to bet too big. I also don't want to bet too small so that he can call with a lot of his sort of middling hands. We actually think we might have the best hand here, and if he was calling us down with a smaller pocket pair, then he might actually call this bet. I don't really think there's too much value here though. Mainly I'm just representing the ace on the turn. Unfortunately he calls. He has ace jack suited. I'm not really sure why he played his hand this way. It seems a little strange. I understand his check call on the flop. He's got backdoor spades, and if an ace comes, he considers himself good most of the time. But when the turn comes an ace, I'm not really sure why he checked. Maybe he thinks of me as an aggressive player and expects me to bet. So obviously representing the ace, not going to work when he in fact has the ace. We're back at home and it's time to go over the rest of the session. A little backstory on this next hand. So the hand prior to this hand, which we weren't involved in, there was 2 guys who got all the way to the river. When action was over, they both got all in. One of the guys flipped his hand up and he had a straight. It was something like he had 9 made a 1-card straight or something like that. So the other guy takes his cards and tosses them face down in front of him. The dealer reasonably mucks his hand. She starts to shove the guy at the pot, the guy that showed, and the other guy says, no wait, I had a 9 also. The dealer calls the floor over, and since it's not really feasible to pick his hand out of the muck because the dealer had already scooped it in with the rest of the cards, the floor ruled correctly that his hand was mucked. The guy was pretty upset. He was complaining It was clear that he didn't really understand the rule. He thought that the dealer should have flipped his cards up, which, you know, she explained to him that she can't flip his cards up, and that if he wants to table his hand up, then he needs to do so. And if he throws it face down forward, that's a muck. Pretty much everybody at the table agreed, and you know, it wasn't really a controversy, but the guy was obviously still upset. So the next hand comes and we're dealt pocket eights and the hijack. As this is going on, the player is still arguing with the dealer. The dealer is trying to conduct the next hand, but the player is continuing to argue with the dealer. So the dealer is kind of, you know, half paying attention, just trying to, you know, calm the guy down and let him know that, hey, you need to protect your hand, and if you're going to see a showdown, you need to flip your cards up and don't toss them forward, etc., etc. There's a couple limps in front of us. We make it 20, and we get 3 callers. The flop is 8-5-5. We flop a boat. So that's good news, but we get even more good news because low jack leads out for 50. It's about a 2/3 size pot bet. I normally don't like to slow play hands very much, but in this instance, we've got such a hammerlock on this hand that I don't want to scare off my opponents just yet. And if we just flat, we can get a couple people to call behind. So that's what we do. We call the 50. Unfortunately, everyone else folds and we're going to a turn. But wait, for some reason, the dealer thinks that the hand's over. She mucks the flop and pushes the chips in my direction. Quickly, I say, no, the hand's not over. And she apologized profusely, and I made sure that I told her, no, the flop was 8-5-5. She pulled it out, it was still on the top, and the hand continued. But we were almost not able to finish this hand. I'm super glad that the hand wasn't ruined, because I've been playing for about 2.5 hours and I was not running very well. It's been a tough night up to this point, and we finally got a huge piece of the flop and we have somebody betting into us. Luckily for us, the hand was able to continue. She rolls out the turn, the 2 of clubs, and the low jack bets 100. So I'm trying to range my opponent here, and I'm just starting to think about, you know, that he has a decent amount of flushes, when suddenly he turns to me. This is after he made his bet. He says, "Don't call, I have a flush already." Well, it's debatable whether or not he's telling the truth, but this guy in particular, I'd been talking to him for quite a while. He was right immediately to my right, and we'd been pretty friendly. So I took him for face value. I believe that he had the flush. In this situation, it's a little awkward because I felt like he was trying to do me a favor by warning me that he had a flush. But at the same time, I don't know this guy. I don't know what he's really doing. He may not have the flush. He may just be trying to get me to fold. So I can't really say, oh, okay, you know, you have the flush and you're giving me a heads up, so now I'm gonna take it easy on you with my boat. No, I have to play my hand. So the plan is, we're going to play this hand like we would any other hand. We could raise here, but if we just call, the pot's gonna be $380 and we're going to have a little over 400 left in our stack for a river jam. So I like having that size for the river in case he checks to me, and also if he bets, I have enough to probably re-raise maybe 2x or so. He probably doesn't have any pairs bigger than 8s, so we don't have to worry about him hitting a 2-outer for a better boat. Essentially the only thing that would beat us is quads, and I'm not gonna worry about that. If he's got quads, then he's gonna deserve every single chip in my stack. The river is the jack of diamonds. Again, this is a good card because there's just not really too many bad cards that can come at this point. I don't think he could have a hand like pocket jacks, considering he just limp called pre-flop. So he bets 200. We think for a little bit, not really thinking, just trying to, you know, put on a tiny bit of a show, and we re-raise to 430 all in. He pretty much snap calls and he flips up a jack high flush. So we double up And for the first time in the session, we are completely unstuck. So towards the end of the night, we managed to run our stack up to about 1,600. We're in for 1,000. And as we're about to leave, we see that they're starting the 5-5 game. I mentioned before, I prefer to play 5-5 over 1-3, and the game doesn't always run. So once I see that happening, I decide, you know what, I'm gonna stick it out for a bit. It's about midnight at this point, but I feel like I have at least another couple hours in me. So we head over to the 5-5 table and we sit down with our 1,600. We're playing 5-handed and hoping that some people will start joining, which is usually the case. Unfortunately, the game never really got going. We played 5-handed for a little while, then we got down to 4-handed, and then this hand happened. The player immediately to my right raises to 20. We call with the King Jack of diamonds. The flop is King 10-8 with 2 diamonds. The player to my right bets out. I think it was somewhere in the range of 45 or 50, which was about pot. He has about 425 behind at this point. We could flat here and maybe do a turn raise, try to get all in, but I decide that I'm gonna go ahead and bump it up now. So I make it $125. I'm sizing here so that when he calls, I can make about a pot size bet on the turn that will put him all in. But he doesn't call. Instead, he jams. When he jams, it's about 400 more, I would say. There's really not much to think about here. There's nothing that is completely crushing us. He can have 2 pairs here. He can have some sets. He could have the 9 Jack of diamonds. Other than sets, we're pretty much just flipping with just about anything else he might have. So we make the call. I asked him if he wants to run it more than once. I'm the kind of person that usually just does whatever my opponent wants to do. And he says he's a rip it guy, so we go ahead and rip it. Turn comes a blank, and the river is a diamond. We quickly show our hand, and he tables 8-10 for a flop 2 pair. Unfortunately, this player did not rebuy, which would have left us 3-handed, and one of the other players wasn't interested in playing 3-handed, which I can understand. Really, the game was probably not very good at this point. So the game breaks, and we end up with about a 45-minute session at 5-5 with a profit of around $600. So we end up 1.2K for the night, and we go home happy. So I know it's been a minute since the last video. We did play a couple sessions over the past few weeks, but honestly, none of the sessions were really that interesting. I tried to find some hands to talk about, but just couldn't really find anything. And in the meantime, we got a lot of footage of doing some other stuff. We had Shelby, our son's first trick-or-treat, and a couple other fall activities. So I'll leave you with a little taste of that, and thank you as always for watching. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe.